Ahoy! With the New World Open Beta now having shut its doors on us, I figured it was time to talk a little bit about how I felt about the beta, how I felt about the changes that were made, compared a little bit to the open beta, and talk about my general experience. As some of you may know, I had around 180 hours experience in the closed beta, and in the open beta I decided to take a little bit of a different approach. I focused very heavily on PvP, and I was flagged at least 95% of the time during the entire beta. I didn't focus very hard on leveling at all. I actually tried to not outlevel the crowd in order to have more PvP opportunities with more people around me around the same level. It didn't work out as well as I was hoping because the server I was playing on was just not the most PvP flagged one in general, but it was still a very good experience overall. And that brings us to the changes. First, let's talk a little bit about smaller quality of life changes and improvements that prevent certain exploits. For example, we have different colors for different types of quests now, which is very nice. We have level ranges on the map now, so you know what area is for what level, makes things a little bit clearer. And there were some restrictions introduced to traveling to your camp, which you can only do within a 500 meter range now, meaning it cannot be abused in order to fast travel all across the map to different towns by death spawning. Death spawning itself, so the possibility to travel across the map by dying, is also nerfed a little bit further by the fact that you can no longer click respawn in the menu itself, so you actually have to die to something. Which you can still do, obviously there are plenty of ways to do that, but it just takes a little bit longer. So overall I think they did a relatively good approach to that for you to not abuse it as much. It can still be used sometimes you're at a quest spot and you just want to go back as quickly as possible, and you can do that if you don't care about the repair costs, but it is still a little bit slower than before for sure, and I think those were good changes. Along with that, we also had some changes to questing and XP, and I think those are a little bit mixed. So for example, town quests were quite significantly nerfed in how much you can get out of most of them, and I think that's a good decision. Town quests are more of a side thing in my opinion and shouldn't really be the main focus, even though at times it almost now doesn't even feel worth to invest any resources into them over crafting, and it feels like it's maybe something you do more in late game when you actually care more about getting reputation in a specific area. I don't know, but I still think that's okay. I think they should just be a little bonus if you have some extra resources that you want to use for something, rather than being the main focus. The downside is that in less populated areas it might take forever to actually get any upgrades in your town done. However, there's an issue that was already there in the closed beta that I think is a little bit worse now with the town quests being nerfed. And that is a particular area of leveling, roughly between level 18, 20 to 25-ish. In this level range you don't really get a lot of quests that are level appropriate for you. And that is kind of created by the fact that there are so many zones that go from level 1 to level 25. And I'm guessing if you always perfectly line up all quests so that you unlock every high level quest, it may just work out in terms of leveling curve, but my experience so far has been that you kind of end up sitting in a spot where you don't really know what to do until around level 25. And then afterwards it speeds up a lot again once you unlock the next areas essentially and go for the quest there, but in between it feels a little bit awkward. This could, in my opinion, easily be solved by just allowing players to accept quests that are a little bit higher above their levels. For example, right now the faction quest is actually locked until level 24, even though it says 20 in the quest description, and some of the items that you get from that are actually only level 20, which is a little bit annoying. Similarly, I would be happy to start the quests in Brightwood just a little bit earlier and then do the mainline dungeon quest a little bit later, so that I could just level up on slightly higher level enemies. I personally don't have an issue with the slightly higher difficulty, and I'd rather be able to just start the quests at the same time. Making some of the quests available only if you're really close in level to the mobs feels a little bit like unnecessary hand-holding to me. I know that in the patch notes you will already mentioned that they introduced better level scaling for those particular levels, but I think it's not the level scaling that's the problem, but rather the lack of quests in that area. The next changes here are more combat focused, the first of those being the armor changes. Those ones I am personally very happy with. I actually ran full heavy armor in the closed beta, and this time I switched over to medium armor, which is now a lot more medium than heavy. Obviously you can min-max things around here, you can actually have up to 2 heavy parts still and get very close to the weight cap in that regard, but I think now the distribution feels fair. If you, for example, were to run full medium armor, you wouldn't be heavily punished for not 100% min-maxing your armor compared to someone who just goes right at the edge of the weight cap. In the context of weight cap, we obviously need to talk about the different dodges for the different weight categories, and that would bring us to the stamina changes. We now have faster stamina regeneration while you still have stamina, and the regeneration while you don't have any stamina is actually equally fast, but you are slowed down while your stamina is drained, and obviously you can't dodge. I showed all of that in great detail in the video that I link in the top right corner right now, where I explained everything about it and I measured all the changes in comparison, so if you are interested in that in more detail, you can check that out. But generally speaking, I would say that after getting used to the changes a little bit, I like them a lot better. I still think that the stamina regeneration right now may just be a little bit too fast because there is a lot of dodging going on in all of the fights, but the overall concept of changing over from rewarding drained stamina to now rewarding it that you don't fully deplete your stamina is something that I most definitely welcome and that I think makes combat a lot more skill-based. Now, the most rewarding usage for dodges are well-timed ones that specifically avoid abilities, but still keep your stamina high enough. In the context of stamina changes, we also can't forget about the weapon changes. Now, the Great Axe got quite a few nerfs, and those nerfs are more fixes than actual nerfs, like balancing fixes that take away some of the issues that it had. But I would still say, even after all that, the Great Axe is a very, very potent weapon. It's still one of the best mobility weapons in close combat and has some of the best lockdown. And along with that, it also has the Bloodlust perk, which is just an insane perk overall, and cleave damage, which is just generally very nice if you're fighting a group of enemies, and that keeps it very, very valuable in my opinion. The tracking on the Great Axe, so the way it follows enemies, is also extremely strong, and I think it's made even stronger by the higher stamina regeneration that you have now, which makes it very, very easy to lock onto enemies for a very long time, and it makes it very hard for them to get away from that. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the tracking on the Great Axe will be nerfed on launch, because it is just sticking to enemies like glue right now. And to my surprise, the sword can actually do the same thing. Actually has excellent tracking too. Not quite as good as the Great Axe, but pretty much better than all other weapons from what I can tell at least. And it has similar movement as well. So with the buffs to the sword, I found the sword extremely enjoyable in this beta. I still ran Hatchet quite a fair bit because it's just the easier thing to do, especially in PvE. But I switched to the sword and shield quite often, and it was quite fun to use, and I really, really enjoyed it. The only problem that I had with it was that the weight of the shield is somewhat inappropriate for the level of armor it provides. There are many ways to solve this. It could, for example, be solved by increasing the armor on the shield, or it could be solved by decreasing the weight on the shield. The shield could also be entirely weightless. I don't know if that's a good idea though. Or there could be certain shields that automatically put you in certain weight classes, but don't actually add any carry weight. Quite a few options, but I think there should be something that is done about that, because it feels weird that you put yourself at a significant disadvantage using your other weapon, especially when running sword and shield in PvP, because you want to have that shield on your back, and you can't use some of the abilities if you just run a sword. You can't use a shield bash, so you're kind of forced to use it. So yeah, that's a little bit annoying right now, but other than that, I really like the sword and how it plays now. The hatchet is still good and fun, and I think that nerf was reasonable, and it's not gonna break the weapon or anything. I personally still felt like it was a very good weapon, even though it annoys me a little bit how many points you need with it in order to unlock all the necessary skills in the Berserk tree. I think it feels like there are a few too many mandatory ones. Ranged weapons were mostly unchanged, taken away especially the bow cancel mechanic though, but I thought that ranged weapons also were not in a place before where they would need significant changes, maybe nerfs if anything, looking at the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, which are still very potent, especially in higher levels. But yeah, I think that was all fine overall. The one weapon that stood out negatively to me once again was the life staff. It's still basically not possible to take down a healer in a 1v1 that's just switching between a damaging weapon and a life staff, because they just have insanely more sustain that you can't even get through in terms of damage, even with Berserk, depending on how they are spec'd, and that is just not how it should be. And I really think that they need to have a look at life staff specifically in 1v1s or in PvP while the healer is getting hit. Just maybe disable the healing temporarily or something. I don't know. There must be some solution to it that doesn't ruin it for PvE, and it doesn't ruin it for healing other people, but for the healer spamming self-heals. When it comes to wars, I was unfortunately unable to participate in one because my server was just refusing to have any wars. But from what I've seen from other people, the stability seems to be much better. Siege weapons are obviously potent because some of them got multiple buffs, but they also got nerfs that specifically relate to armor. I didn't see too many heavy armor users though, so we couldn't really see how the full impact would be for someone who stands on a point and actually tanks it up when getting hit by siege weapons, because that is what should counter them now. Outside of wars, the game stability was unfortunately worse for me personally. I had a lot of stutters and frame rate issues around towns, especially even in the area in front of Windsward where people typically duel. So that was very frustrating, and even when just walking around somewhere, my frames were lower than in the closed beta. In that regard, I'm actually very interested to hear your guys' opinion, and I'm going to post a poll for that, so you can vote on how your stability in the beta was, how your game performance was. It was overall good, better than closed beta if you played it, or worse. Because I really want to know what direction that went into for you, because I've heard very mixed reports. Some people had a similar experience as me, where their performance was significantly worse, whereas others had a better experience apparently. Now, that said, optimization is usually the last thing to be looked at, and I'm hoping we will still see significant improvements in that regard for launch, when the drivers for the game come out. And in a recent interview with VentureBeat.com, Amazon Games also confirmed that they'd be looking to introduce DirectX 12 shortly after release, which may lead to further performance boosts. The weapon gems, the int gems and focus gems, unfortunately still not fully fixed. That was something that I was hoping to see fixed in the open beta. Hopefully it'll at least be the case on release, because that one is just a little bit of a weird one. Then the last topic here would be PvP scaling, which is quite a big one because I actually did a lot of testing for that and I did a lot of measuring for that. So I will talk about that tomorrow when I've evaluated all the results, and then I can give you a more educated opinion than just relying on my gut feelings. If you would like to see that, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell, since that'll notify you when the video comes out, so you'll actually know how exactly the PvP scaling worked. Overall, my impression from the open beta was positive. It was a little bit soured by some of my impressions about the PvP scaling at least, and by some of the performance issues, and tiny bit by the fact that I chose the wrong server, but that's just unlucky. But generally speaking, most of the things I liked, most of the changes I was very happy with, and I think that's what counts the most. I know that some people think that New World should be delayed again. I don't think it should be, and they've confirmed on Twitter once again that they are aiming for the same release still, so I'm really not too worried. I don't think they can really afford another delay anyways. Those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below how you felt, if you liked most of the changes or if you would rather run the old build. If you enjoyed this video, subscribing and clicking the bell would mean a lot to me. Also, if you're looking for a place to hang out and chat about the game until it goes live, feel free to hop in my Discord, a link will be down below. And if you want to watch me stream at launch, that will be on twitch.tv/DukeSloth. So, links all down below. I hope to see you for the next one soon. DukeSloth, out.